Thank you, Pope Francis, for your life of service, humility, and deep compassion. You led with kindness, broke barriers with love, and reminded the world of the power of mercy and hope. Your legacy of faith, justice, and unity will live on in the hearts of millions. May you rest in eternal peace and grace. What would you do if your hometown turned its back on the sacrifices you made for your country? On a radiant spring morning, the quaint town of Willow Creek buzzed with anticipation. Its central plaza transformed into a kaleidoscope of color and sound for its 150th anniversary. Banners fluttered in the breeze. The aroma of caramel apples and grilled corn wafted through the air, and laughter echoed as children darted between stalls, their faces painted with bright butterflies and stars. From the window of his modest third-floor apartment on Oak Avenue, Ethan Carter gazed at the scene below, his hazel eyes clouded with a storm of emotions. At 40, Ethan retained the disciplined posture and buzzed haircut of his military days, but the wheelchair he'd relied on for 6 years told a story of sacrifice that few could fathom. His apartment walls whispered tales of valor. Framed medals gleamed in a wooden case. A faded photograph captured him in uniform amidst the Afghan mountains, and a neatly pressed jacket hung on a peg, a relic of a past he could never reclaim. "This looks like a day to remember, doesn't it?" chimed Clara, his 55-year-old occupational therapist, as she arrived for their routine session, her voice warm with the excitement of the day. "It sure does," Ethan replied, his tone tinged with a wistful edge as he rolled away from the window, the glass cool against his fingertips. Willow Creek hasn't been this alive for its birthday in years. 150 years is a big deal. Clara adjusted her therapy tools with a warm smile, her gray curls bouncing as she moved. "I heard Senator James Harper is coming to speak." Ethan nodded, but his mind was elsewhere, adrift in a sea of uncertainty. "I'm still waiting to hear about the parade. I sent my application a month ago, but nothing." Clara's brow furrowed, her hands pausing mid-motion. "That's odd. They let almost everyone join. Maybe they misplaced it." Ethan's tone betrayed his doubt, a quiet edge of frustration seeping through. "Maybe." As Clara guided him through his exercises, Ethan's gaze kept drifting to the festivities below. The rhythm of the town's excitement pulsed through the glass. A marching band tuning up, the chatter of vendors, the squeals of children on a bouncy castle. A stark contrast to the silence of his own uncertainty. "You should go, even if you're not in the parade," Clara urged as she packed up, her voice gentle but firm. "It might lift your spirits." Ethan hesitated, his fingers brushing the armrest of his wheelchair, the metal cool and unyielding. "I'll think about it." Once Clara left, he wheeled over to his desk, the wooden surface scratched and worn, and opened a drawer to reveal the letter he'd sent to the anniversary committee, requesting to join the parade as a veteran. Beside it lay a photograph, Ethan in his uniform, surrounded by his squad under the scorching Afghan sun, their smiles frozen in time. 3 of those smiling faces never made it home, and the memory stung, sharp as a blade, as he closed the drawer with a sigh, the hinges creaking softly. Ethan's apartment, though small, was his haven, a sanctuary carved out after months in a military hospital and grueling rehab. The walls, painted a soft blue, seemed to hold him together on the hardest days. This space on Oak Avenue was a hard-won piece of independence, a place where he could breathe without the sterile scent of antiseptic or the pitying stares of nurses. The scars from the roadside bomb that had claimed his mobility had faded, but the ache of feeling incomplete lingered like a shadow, whispering doubts in the quiet moments. One day at a time, he murmured to himself, a mantra that had carried him through the darkest days, his voice barely audible over the distant hum of the festival. He pulled on a navy jacket over a gray shirt, the fabric soft against his skin, checked for his keys and wallet, and maneuvered his wheelchair out the door. The building's newly installed elevator hummed as it lowered him to the street, where the hum of celebration enveloped him like a warm embrace. Families waved tiny flags, their colors vivid against the morning light. Elderly couples strolled with wistful smiles, and children's laughter rang out like bells, chasing each other through the crowd. For a fleeting moment, Ethan felt a thread of connection to the town he'd returned to after his service, a flicker of hope that today might be different. Now, dear listener, put yourself in Ethan's shoes. You've poured your heart into serving your country, but but your hometown seems to have forgotten you. What would you do next? Option 1. Head to the plaza to confront the committee about your parade application, risking rejection in front of everyone. Option 2. Stay on the sidelines, watching the celebration unfold, hoping someone notices your absence. Share your choice in the comments. Write Option 1 or Option 2 and tell us why. And if you're moved by stories like Ethan's, please hit that subscribe button for daily narrated stories. We're so close to 1,000 subscribers, and your support means the world to us. The short journey to Willow Creek's Central Plaza was a familiar one for Ethan, who navigated his wheelchair with the ease of years of practice. The cobblestone path, worn smooth by decades of footsteps, felt comforting under his wheels, a reminder of the town he'd known since childhood. Yet, as he moved through the streets, the air buzzing with celebration, he couldn't shake the weight of anticipation or the dread that lingered in his chest. Neighbors greeted him warmly, their smiles genuine. "Morning, Ethan," called Mrs. Larson from the bakery, her apron dusted with flour, but he couldn't miss the fleeting glances of pity that followed. Some looked away too quickly, others offered awkward nods, their eyes lingering on his wheelchair before darting elsewhere. Ethan forced a smile, but inside, a familiar ache stirred. He'd grown used to these looks over the years, but today, on Willow Creek's 150th anniversary, they stung more than usual. He wanted to be part of this day, to feel the town's pride as his own, but the silence from the parade committee gnawed at him like a persistent thorn. The plaza was a whirlwind of activity, more vibrant than he'd seen from his window. The scent of freshly cut grass mingled with the smoky tang of grilled sausages from a nearby vendor, and the laughter of children playing tag near a balloon arch filled the air. A stage draped in the town's colors of green and gold stood proudly on the eastern side, its banner fluttering in the breeze. Willow Creek Sesquicentennial, 150 years of unity. Rows of chairs fanned out before it, already filling with eager spectators clutching programs and waving tiny flags. In the heart of the plaza, parade participants gathered, their costumes a patchwork of Willow Creek's history, some dressed as 19th century farmers, others as 1920s flappers, their laughter bright as they adjusted their props. Ethan's eyes lingered on a group of high schoolers carrying a banner that read "Future Leaders of Willow Creek," their faces alight with excitement. A pang of envy twisted in his gut, followed by a wave of guilt. He wasn't the soldier he'd once been, the one who could march with his head held high. But did that mean he had no place here? "Ethan, glad you made it," called out Margaret Ellis, his former literature teacher, her voice bright as she leaned on her walking stick. Her silver hair caught the sunlight, and her eyes crinkled with warmth as she approached. "I wouldn't miss the town's big day, Mrs. Ellis," Ethan replied, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Are you in the parade?" Margaret asked, her gaze flickering to his wheelchair with curiosity rather than pity, a small comfort. Ethan's smile faltered, the knot in his chest tightening. "No, it seems my application didn't make the cut." Margaret's expression darkened, her brow furrowing with concern. "That can't be right. You're one of Willow Creek's finest." "Why? I remember you as a boy, always so determined, helping your dad at the hardware store, joining the Scouts, and then enlisting after September 11th. You've done more for this country than most will in a lifetime." Ethan shrugged, his voice low, barely audible over the hum of the crowd. "Not everyone sees it that way." Margaret opened her mouth to respond, but a loudspeaker crackled to life, cutting through the noise. "The parade begins in 45 minutes. Participants, please move to your designated spots." The crowd surged around them, a wave of motion as people hurried to their places. "You should speak to the committee," Margaret insisted, her tone firm. "There must be a mix-up. They can't just ignore you like this." Ethan nodded, though doubt gnawed at him like a persistent ache. "Maybe. Enjoy the celebration, Mrs. Ellis." She gave his shoulder a reassuring pat before walking away, her steps slow but steady, leaving Ethan to turn his attention to the main tent, where committee members bustled about, distributing badges and instructions. Steeling himself, he wheeled toward it, the hum of anticipation in the air doing little to ease the storm brewing inside him. His hands trembled slightly on the wheels, a mix of nerves and frustration, as he navigated through the crowd, dodging a child chasing a runaway balloon and a vendor balancing a tray of lemonade cups. The tent was a flurry of motion, with volunteers darting between tables, their voices overlapping in a chaotic symphony. A young man in a volunteer shirt shouted, "Historical reenactors, line up on the left," while a woman nearby pinned a badge onto a participant's sash. Ethan approached the main counter, where a woman in her late 40s, her badge reading coordinator, offered a polite smile. Her hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her clipboard was a mess of colorful sticky notes. "How can I help you?" she asked, her tone professional but distracted as she glanced at the growing line behind him. "I'm Ethan Carter," he said, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "I applied to join the parade as a veteran a month ago, but I never heard back." The woman flipped through her clipboard, her brow creasing as she scanned the pages. "Carter, I don't see your name here." Ethan's jaw tightened, a flicker of anger sparking in his chest. "I'm sure I sent it. I even emailed a follow-up last week." She nodded, her expression apologetic. "Let me check with the director." She vanished behind a partition, leaving Ethan to wait, his eyes wandering to the parade groups assembling outside the tent. Some participants wore historical garb, bonnets and suspenders representing Willow Creek's early days, while others waved banners celebrating the sesquicentennial, their bold letters proclaiming 150 years strong. A group of children in bright costumes practiced a dance routine, their giggles mingling with the sound of a trumpet warming up nearby. Ethan's heart ached with a longing he couldn't suppress, a desire to be part of this moment, to feel the town's pride as his own. But the memory of his last parade, before the injury, when he'd marched in uniform with his squad, the crowd cheering, felt like a distant dream. Now, he was an outsider in his own hometown, a ghost of the man he'd been. The coordinator returned, accompanied by a man in a tailored charcoal suit and a green tie. His badge read Director, Sesquicentennial Committee, and identified him as Mayor Leonard Hayes, who had led Willow Creek for 4 years. Hayes' smile was tight, his eyes cold despite the warmth of the day. "Mr. Carter," he began, his voice smooth but lacking sincerity, "I'm sorry for the confusion." Ethan's eyes narrowed, his military-honed instincts picking up on Hayes' discomfort. "What confusion? I never got a response." Hayes cleared his throat, his fingers adjusting his tie as if it were too tight. "The committee had to make tough choices about the parade lineup. We wanted to focus on a forward-looking vision for Willow Creek." Ethan felt a chill settle in his bones, the mayor's words cutting deeper than he'd expected. "And a veteran in a wheelchair doesn't fit that vision?" His tone was measured, but the anger beneath it was palpable. Hayes waved a hand dismissively, his smile faltering. "That's not what I meant. We're emphasizing the more peaceful chapters of our history this year. Military honors have their own day, you understand." Ethan's face remained stoic, years of military discipline holding his emotions in check, but inside, a storm raged. He'd faced enemy fire, lost friends, and sacrificed his mobility for this country, only to be told he didn't belong in his town's story. "I understand perfectly, Mayor Hayes," he said, his voice cold. "Thank you for clarifying." As he turned to leave, Hayes added, his tone almost patronizing, "Perhaps next year we can feature a segment on veterans' rehabilitation programs. It might be a good fit for you." Ethan froze, his grip tightening on his wheelchair until his knuckles whitened. The words hit him like a slap, reducing his service to a footnote, a problem to be solved rather than a legacy to be honored. "I'm not here to be a symbol of rehab, Mayor," he said, his voice low but sharp. "I served with honor. Doesn't that mean anything to Willow Creek's history?" Hayes shifted uncomfortably, his polished facade cracking under Ethan's gaze. "Of course it does," he said quickly. "It's just not our focus this year." Ethan's voice was steel, cutting through the noise of the tent. "You've made that clear. Have a good day." He wheeled out, fury simmering beneath his composed exterior, the sounds of the festival fading into a dull roar as he sought solace under a towering oak tree on the plaza's edge. Its shade offered a small reprieve, the dappled sunlight filtering through the leaves, but the anger in his chest burned hotter than the spring sun. He closed his eyes, trying to steady his breathing, but the mayor's words echoed in his mind, each one a dagger to his pride. As Ethan settled under the tree, a question gnawed at him, sharp and unrelenting. Had the committee truly lost his application, or was this exclusion deliberate? He recalled a rumor he'd heard weeks ago at the local diner, that Mayor Hayes was pushing a modern image for Willow Creek to attract new businesses, sidelining anything that didn't fit his narrative. A friend had mentioned seeing Hayes at a town hall meeting, boasting about rebranding Willow Creek as a progressive hub, free of outdated symbols. Was that what Ethan was to him? An outdated symbol? The thought twisted in his gut, leaving him to wonder if there were others like him, pushed aside for the sake of appearances. He scanned the crowd, searching for familiar faces. Other veterans he knew lived in Willow Creek, like Tom Bradley, who'd served in the Gulf War, or Sarah Jennings, a reservist who'd returned from a recent deployment. Were they here, hidden in the crowd, or had they too been excluded? The uncertainty hung heavy, a storm cloud over the festive day, and Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something deeper was at play. The parade began with a burst of music from the school band, their brass instruments glinting in the sunlight as they played a lively march. They were followed by firefighters in polished uniforms, their red truck gleaming as they waved to the crowd. Then local clubs, a procession of vintage cars with horns honking cheerfully, and finally the official city contingent, with Mayor Hayes at the forefront, his smile wide as he waved to the cheering spectators. Ethan watched from his spot under the oak, the vibrant colors and joyful sounds a stark contrast to the turmoil inside him. The crowd clapped and cheered, children waving flags as the floats passed, but Ethan felt detached, an outsider in a celebration that should have been his too. "Disappointed you're not out there?" a deep voice asked, pulling him from his thoughts. Ethan turned to see an older man on a nearby bench, dressed in a sharp navy suit with a subtle lapel pin, a politician's mark. His gray hair was neatly combed, and his eyes held a quiet intensity as he studied Ethan. "A little," Ethan admitted, his voice heavy with the weight of the morning. The man extended a hand, his grip firm but warm. "I'm Senator James Harper, representing this district." Ethan shook his hand, a flicker of respect stirring in his chest. "Staff Sergeant Ethan Carter, sir. 1st Infantry Division, Afghanistan. 2 tours. The second ended my career." Harper nodded, his gaze understanding, as if he could see the scars, both visible and hidden, that Ethan carried. "Why aren't you in the parade with the other veterans?" Ethan glanced around, confused, his brow furrowing. "Other veterans? I haven't seen any, sir." Harper's frown deepened, a shadow crossing his face. "That's strange. Nearly 20% of Willow Creek has served in the military. Seems the town made a choice about the image it wanted to project today." Ethan's voice was tight, the bitterness he'd tried to suppress rising to the surface. "The mayor said they're focusing on peaceful history." Harper studied him, his expression unreadable, but there was a spark of something, anger, perhaps, in his eyes. Harper's words hung in the air, but he didn't reveal his own military past just yet, leaving Ethan and the audience wondering about the depth of his understanding. Was he just another politician, here to make a speech and win votes? Or did he truly grasp Ethan's struggle? The question lingered, adding a layer of intrigue as Harper watched the parade with a thoughtful gaze, his fingers tapping lightly on the bench. Ethan studied him, searching for a clue, but Harper's face gave nothing away, his silence only heightening the tension. The parade rolled on, the band's music swelling as children waved flags and the crowd cheered, but Ethan's mind was elsewhere, caught between the senator's cryptic demeanor and the sting of his own exclusion. "I have an idea," Harper said after a long moment, his voice breaking the silence between them. "Would you join me on stage when I speak?" Ethan blinked, caught off guard, his heart skipping a beat. "Me? What?" Harper's smile was genuine, a rare warmth in his otherwise composed demeanor. "Because Willow Creek's spirit isn't in those floats or banners. It's in people like you, who gave everything for this town and our nation. Besides, politicians talk too much. It's time we heard from someone with something real to say." Ethan's chest tightened, a mix of fear and a long-dormant sense of purpose stirring within him. The idea of speaking, of facing the crowd, sent a jolt of panic through him. He hadn't spoken publicly since before his injury, and the thought of all those eyes on him, judging him, made his palms sweat. "I'm not a speaker, sir," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Harper's tone was firm, unwavering. "I'm not asking for a speech. I'm asking for truth. Think about it. I go on in an hour." With that, Harper rose and melted into the crowd, leaving Ethan beneath the oak, his mind a whirlwind of emotions. As Ethan sat there, memories flooded back, unbidden and raw, each one a shard of glass in his mind. He saw himself in the military hospital, the sterile white walls closing in as he lay in bed, staring at legs that no longer responded. The first night he'd woken in a cold sweat, the phantom pain of the explosion searing through him. He'd whispered to himself, "I'm nothing now." The fear of being forgotten, of fading into obscurity, had haunted him ever since, a shadow that followed him through every quiet moment. He remembered the letters he'd written to his squad mates' families, Michael's wife, who'd sobbed over the phone, and Jacob's mother, who'd sent him a photo of her son's childhood treehouse, a place Ethan had played in as a boy. Those losses weighed on him, a burden he carried alone, and the thought of sharing them with the town felt both terrifying and liberating. Now, Harper's offer dangled before him, a chance to be seen, to matter again. But the thought of facing the crowd, of baring his soul, made his heart race with dread. Could he do this? Did he even deserve to? He thought of his father, who'd passed a year before Ethan's deployment, a man who'd always said, "Courage isn't the absence of fear, son, it's acting despite it." The memory steadied him, a quiet anchor in the storm of his emotions. The parade continued, a blur of color and sound, as Ethan wrestled with his decision. Families, elders, and young couples gathered, their unity a painful reminder of what he'd lost, the sense of belonging he'd craved since returning home. A young girl in a bright yellow dress ran past, her laughter echoing as she chased a butterfly, and Ethan's thoughts drifted to his niece, Emily, who'd once asked him, "Uncle Ethan, are you a superhero?" He'd laughed it off, but today he wondered if he could be that for her, for the town, if he found the strength to speak. As the parade wound down, the crowd shifted toward the stage for the speeches, their chatter rising like a wave. Ethan found himself moving with them, almost on instinct, stopping near the platform as the MC introduced the speakers. Mayor Hayes took the stage first, his speech a polished string of promises about growth and a modern future, his eyes occasionally darting to Ethan with a flicker of unease. Ethan noticed the mayor's hands fidgeting with his notes, a telltale sign of nerves, and wondered if Hayes felt the weight of his decision to exclude the veterans. Other speakers followed, a business leader touting economic growth, the high school principal praising the town's youth, a historian tracing Willow Creek's roots from a small trading post to a thriving community. Ethan stood still, caught between the pull of the stage and the weight of his doubts, the voices around him fading into a distant hum as he grappled with his choice. Finally, the MC's voice rang out, sharp and clear. "It's my honor to introduce our representative to Congress, a proud son of Willow Creek, Senator James Harper." The crowd erupted in applause as Harper ascended the stage, his presence commanding, his navy suit impeccable against the green backdrop. He began his speech, his words weaving a tapestry of community and tradition, each sentence deliberate and resonant. "We've heard a lot about progress today," Harper said, his voice steady, cutting through the murmur of the crowd. "But real progress doesn't mean erasing our past. It means building on the sacrifices of those who came before us." He paused, his gaze locking onto Mayor Hayes, who shifted in his seat, his discomfort palpable. "I was shocked to learn that in a celebration of Willow Creek's history, there was no room to honor those who risked everything. Our veterans, who embody the best of our spirit. And I was even more stunned to hear that one veteran was deliberately excluded from our parade." Harper's hand swept toward Ethan, a gesture both commanding and inviting. "Staff Sergeant Ethan Carter, would you join me on stage?" The plaza fell silent, hundreds of eyes turning to Ethan, their weight pressing down on him like a physical force. His breath caught, his body frozen for a heartbeat, the silence stretching into an eternity. Then, as if muscle memory from his military days kicked in, he began wheeling toward the stage's ramp, his movements slow but determined. A single clap broke the silence, sharp and clear, then another, and soon the entire crowd was applauding, the sound swelling like a tide as Ethan reached the stage, positioning himself beside Harper. "This is Staff Sergeant Ethan Carter," Harper announced, his voice carrying across the plaza, steady and proud. Born and raised in Willow Creek, he served 2 tours in Afghanistan. On his second, A roadside bomb struck his vehicle. 2 of his comrades died instantly. Ethan survived, but he lost the use of his legs. He returned to Willow Creek 6 years ago and has lived quietly among us. When he heard about the sesquicentennial, he applied to march in the parade as a veteran. His application was denied. The crowd's silence was heavy, their eyes shifting to Mayor Hayes, who seemed to shrink in his chair, his face pale under the stage lights. Harper continued, his tone unwavering. I'm not here to point fingers. I'm here to right a wrong. Ethan Carter and all of Willow Creek's veterans deserve to be honored, not hidden as if they're a stain on our history. He turned to Ethan, his voice softening, a quiet encouragement in his eyes. Sergeant Carter, would you like to say a few words? Ethan's heart pounded as he looked at the microphone, then at the sea of faces, neighbors, shopkeepers, families he'd passed on the streets. Fear gripped him, a cold sweat breaking out on his brow. But then he thought of his fallen comrades, men who'd never had the chance to stand where he did now. He thought of Michael, who dreamed of opening a mechanic shop in Willow Creek, and Jacob, who'd planned to propose to his high school sweetheart. They deserved to be remembered, and if Ethan didn't speak for them, who would? He found his voice, raw and trembling but resolute. I'm no speaker, he began, his words quivering with emotion, each one a battle against the fear clawing at his throat. Just a soldier who did what he thought was right. I enlisted after September 11th, not for medals or praise, but because I loved my country and what it stands for. He gestured to his wheelchair, his voice steadying as he found his rhythm. I paid a price for that, but others paid more. Michael Reynolds and Jacob Holt, who grew up here in Willow Creek, didn't come home. They should be here, celebrating with their families. Tears glistened in the crowd, especially among older residents who'd likely sent loved ones to war, their faces etched with a shared understanding of loss. I'm not here to stir division, Ethan continued, his voice growing stronger. I'm here because Willow Creek is my home. Always has been, always will be. In the mountains of Afghanistan, I thought of these streets, these people. That's what kept me going. He looked directly at Mayor Hayes, his gaze unflinching, a quiet challenge in his eyes. I don't mind being left out of the parade. What hurts is the idea that my service, and the service of so many others, should be forgotten. We're not relics. We're your neighbors, your friends, your family. A profound silence followed, the weight of Ethan's words hanging in the air like a sacred vow. Then a lone clap echoed, joined by another, until the plaza thundered with applause, the sound reverberating off the surrounding buildings. Ethan noticed something incredible. People were standing. Older veterans, younger reservists, and civilians alike rose, some with tears streaming down their faces, their hands coming together in a wave of gratitude. Harper spoke into the microphone, his voice resonant with pride. It seems we have many unsung heroes here today. Veterans of Willow Creek, please join us on stage if you'd like. What followed was a sight to behold. Dozens of veterans made their way forward, from gray-haired Korean War soldiers to younger National Guard members, forming a solemn line behind Ethan and Harper. Mayor Hayes watched, his expression a mix of shock and discomfort. As the crowd's applause grew louder, many visibly moved, their cheers a testament to the town's rediscovered unity. As the veterans gathered, a few voices rose above the crowd, their stories weaving a tapestry of shared sacrifice. An elderly man, his hands trembling as he gripped a cane, shared a memory of his service in the Korean War, his voice breaking as he recalled a freezing night on the front lines where he'd promised a dying friend he'd live for both of them. I kept that promise, he said, tears glistening in his eyes, but I never thought I'd see a day when we'd be forgotten. A younger woman, a National Guard reservist, spoke of her deployment during a recent disaster relief mission, her voice steady but emotional as she described the children she'd helped evacuate from a flooded town. I saw their faces every night in my dreams, she admitted, and I came home thinking I'd done enough. But today, I realize we still have to fight to be seen. Their stories echoed Ethan's own, each one a thread in the fabric of Willow Creek's history, making the stage a living monument to the town's veterans. Harper turned to Ethan, his voice low but firm, a quiet respect in his tone. I believe you've done what no politician could, Sergeant. You've brought Willow Creek together. Ethan felt a warmth in his chest, not pride, but belonging, a feeling he hadn't known in years. as if the town had finally opened its arms to him again. Mayor Hayes rose, his face a mask of strained composure, and approached the microphone, his steps hesitant. He began, his voice faltering. I made a mistake. Mayor Hayes cleared his throat, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. In my rush to craft a celebration focused on the future, I failed to honor our past. For that, I'm deeply sorry. He turned to Ethan and the line of veterans behind him, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. Your sacrifices should have been at the heart of this day, not pushed aside. I apologize, especially to you, Sergeant Carter. He extended a hand, his expression raw with regret. Ethan hesitated, the crowd holding its breath, the air thick with anticipation. Then, for the sake of the town he cherished, he reached out and shook Hayes' hand, the gesture a bridge between past and future. I accept your apology, Mayor, Ethan said, his voice clear through the microphone, resonating with a quiet strength. Let's celebrate Willow Creek together, past, present, and future. The plaza erupted in applause, louder and more heartfelt than before, a wave of unity washing over the crowd. The festivities stretched into the evening, but the atmosphere had shifted, the air now warm with a newfound sense of togetherness. Veterans were now the focal point, sharing stories with neighbors, receiving thanks long overdue, and standing as pillars of the community they'd fought for. Ethan found himself at the center of it all, shaking hands, accepting gratitude, and even speaking with children who approached his wheelchair with wide-eyed curiosity, their tiny hands clutching flags. Their parents encouraged them, whispering, "This is what a real hero looks like," their voices soft with reverence. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the plaza, Ethan caught up with Senator Harper, who was preparing to leave, his suit jacket slung over his arm. "Thank you, sir," Ethan said, his voice thick with emotion, a lump rising in his throat. "For what you did today." Harper smiled, his eyes warm, reflecting the fading light. "I only set the stage, Sergeant. You're the one who changed things. Look around." Ethan did, his gaze sweeping over the scene before him. He saw veterans of all ages laughing with young families, sharing tales of service that spanned decades. He saw Mayor Hayes in deep conversation with an elderly Korean War veteran, listening intently, his posture no longer stiff with pride, but softened with understanding. He saw a town that, for this day at least, felt whole, a community rediscovering its heart. "There's power in our stories," Harper said, his voice a quiet rumble, "in remembering who we are." Hayes wasn't wrong about looking forward, but we can't build a future by ignoring our past. Ethan nodded, the words resonating deeply, like a bell tolling in his soul. "What now?" Harper asked, his gaze thoughtful. "I'll keep going, I guess. One day at a time." Harper's eyes held a spark of encouragement. "Ever thought of doing more? My office needs someone to coordinate veterans' services, someone who truly understands their struggles." He handed Ethan a card, the paper crisp against his fingers. "Consider it. Not every battlefield is overseas." As Harper departed, Ethan lingered in the emptying plaza, the card a weight in his hand, its edges pressing into his palm. The setting sun cast golden hues over the lawn where a divided town had found unity, the light painting the grass in shades of amber and gold. He looked at his wheelchair, at the legs that no longer moved, and for the first time, he saw not an end, but a beginning, a new way to serve, to matter. Tucking the card into his pocket, he wheeled toward the plaza's edge, where a group of veterans called out, inviting him to join them at a local diner, their voices warm with camaraderie. Ethan smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes, and changed course, the wheels of his chair rolling smoothly over the path. True heroism, he realized, wasn't in medals or grand gestures. It was in the quiet determination to keep living, to turn loss into purpose, to find belonging again. What does heroism mean to you? Have you or someone you know faced a moment where your contributions were overlooked, only to rise above it? Share your story in the comments below. We'd love to hear how you found your voice, just like Ethan did. Your experiences inspire us all. The moment lingered, a testament to resilience and community, as a song began to play, its lyrics weaving through the air like a gentle breeze. These wheels keep rolling through the scars, on roads where no one knows my stars, medals in a case. gathering time, memories that forever shine. They say the fight is long since done, but in my heart, the war's not won. Standing strong though I can't stand at all, my spirit won't break, won't let me fall. This isn't about the battles I've known, it's about the peace we've all been shown. My sacrifice was never for show, just part of who I am, part of how I grow. I won't be forgotten, I'll make that clear. Some scars you see, some you can't, but honor's not a thing to grant. One voice can pierce the quiet so loud, reminding us what makes us proud. When they try to push you to the side, hold tight to the strength you've got inside. Courage to face another dawn. The fight may be lost, but you've already won. I won't be forgotten, I refuse to fade. These wheels keep turning, bearing my pride each day. Stories like Ethan's remind us of the power of standing up, of being seen, of uniting a community through courage and truth. Daily Narrated Stories is dedicated to bringing you these life-changing tales that inspire and uplift, but we can't do it without you. Subscribe now to join our family, comment your thoughts, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. We're racing to 1,000 subscribers, and every second counts. Don't miss your chance to be part of this movement. Hit that button, and let's keep these stories alive together.